Mr. Ortiz, welcome to the 22nd International Exhibition in East Serbia, and thank you for joining us in celebration of the World Town Planning Day.
It is a pleasure and it is an honor to be with you.
Mr. Ortiz, can you describe what is an explosive urban growth that characterizes many cities around the world, especially Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East, and Asia? And how do you advise their governments in dealing with this issue?
Well, as you know, the figures a couple of years ago, it was in June 2010, the world has reached 50% of people living in cities, 50% of urbanization of mankind. But developed countries are far beyond that 50%. Developed countries are in 75–80% of urbanization. As development grows, takes place, people go to cities because it's much more productive, because of economies of scale. The more you condense, the more you get together, the more you produce, you interact and you produce. So the tendency of the world will be reaching 75% of urbanization in a few years, in 30 years, 40 years, whatever. The expectations, which are actually happening, is that in the next 20 years, 2,000 million, 2 billion people are going to move from rural to urban. 2 billion people in 20 years, that means 300,000 people every day. So a city of 300,000 people, niche and a half, has to be built every day. Many of those cities are growing at a pace of 5% every year. 5% every year doesn't look much, but that means doubling every 14 years.
Yes.
Imagine if Paris or London or New York had to double every 14 years, if you had to build Paris in 14 years or New York in 14 years. So that will mean, in the case of New York, that will mean 10 blocks of New York every day.
Yes.
So you have to go with a magic stick, building 10 blocks every day. That kind of growth is so huge, so immense, that governments are not able to cope with it. For the last 30 years, we have been denying that growth. We have been saying, let's not accept people coming into cities. Let's keep people in the countryside. Let's promise them that we will provide all social services, quality of life on the countryside. That doesn't happen because that is extremely expensive. So people come to the cities anyway, and by denying the access to the cities, you are not providing the necessary equipments, facilities, service land, and so on. So they build slums. So actually, all those cities around the world that are denying or are unable to provide service land to these people are buying slums. So we are building 60,000 slums every day. The time we will be talking together, probably 1,000 slums will be built while we are talking around the world.
It's fascinating. Yes.
That is a bomb. That is a bomb. It's not only unjust, we are not only not taking care of the equity, social justice, the need for people to live in human conditions, but as well efficiency.
Yes.
That world of slums is creating ghettos for the future of a world of justice, violence, and inefficiency and unsustainability, obviously, because those slums do not take care about the environment and the required needs to use our natural assets in a rational way. So we are destroying that kind of future, putting at stake, jeopardizing that future by not acting on that growth of Metropolis. And that is what the book is about.
Okay, and how do you advise their governments to deal with these issues?
Well, the advice is first being intelligent, and second, being able to forecast the future. Being intelligent means have social intelligence, being able to dialogue, to find grounds to administrations. When you are dealing with large metropolis, you are not dealing just with one municipality. You are dealing with many municipalities, a regional government, a national government, a multinational government. You are dealing with very many levels. In a democracy, power is not concentrated in a single person. It is spread around in many institutions. And those institutions have to work together. That's what we call social resources, the capacity of a society to work together to produce a positive element. We have human resources, which is the knowledge we all have, but social resources is the capacity to dialogue of that knowledge to put something forward. So that is the social intelligence, no? The capacity to dialogue and to produce a project for the future. And then that project, that forecast for 20 or 30 years, we should not, when we are dealing with urban planning, just look at the next 10 years, which is what urban plan and urban plans do. We have to look in a strategic way of what is the role of that city in a global economy, for instance, niche as a place between the Central Europe and Turkey, so the road link, the umbilical link between Turkey's production, Central Europe production, the road, the rail, and so on, the role of a city in the future, and then build up a vision of the city, the growth, not look at our growth of 5 years, because that's going to be short. You have to look at a growth in long term and to be able to provide services and so on. It is more important to have an idea than to have money. Yes. Because money, sooner or later, will be, no? But if you have used the land in a wrong way, you will not have the place to put things right in the future when you will have money. So the vision of where things should be and to make an equilibrated city is even more important than having the money to invest in infrastructures, because sooner or later that money will come.
Yes, I agree. You base your practice on reticular metrics or metrometrics planning, which you first introduced back in 1996 in the Regional Plan of Madrid, and which is also described in your latest book, The Art of Shaping the Metropolis. Mr. Ortiz, can you tell us what are the basics of this concept and how do you propose it to the rapid growing metropolises around the world?
Well, Walter Christaller said, well, metropolis will grow in a system of hexagons with a central city and with secondary and tertiary cities around. That works, as he said, in a featureless plane. Where you have a flat plane and nothing there, then the relationship between the cities create that kind of hexagon mesh, no? But that rarely happens in actual planning, no? Because metropolis are not in featureless planes. Metropolis are always in the edge, on the border of two ecosystems, the sea and the land, a river with a valley, a passage into a mountains, to some kind of area. Metropolis have grown because they have a comparative advantage of localization. No? And that comparative advantage is always being the gate between two ecosystems. When you are with two ecosystems, generally the border of those two ecosystems is a straight line. So metropolis are not round. Yes. They don't grow like onion rings, no? They grow at a small scale, but once they really have become large metropolis, it's not anymore the oil, the onion ring, yes. The oil state. There is a very clear directionality in metropolises, and then if you have a main directionality, you have the transversal one, which create a reticular, and you have to understand that directionality of the metropolis and the secondary directionality to create the reticular and to work the future of the metropolis within the DNA. You have to understand the DNA of a city, niche as well, even if it's not a large metropolis, only 200,000 inhabitants, but it has as well a very strong directionality. So thinking about making ring roads around those metropolis is creating a congestion, because if you make a ring road, you are fostering the centrality. Everyone wants to be in that central point. Everyone everyone pays more money for land in that central point. Everyone goes there, congestion, roads, and so on. And you have to open up the structure of the cities to a polynuclear structure where everyone can choose where to locate, and that is much more efficient. So Metro Matrix, what it does, it says, look, metropolis are not round. Metropolis have directionalities, have linearities. Let's play with that. Most of them create reticulars. Let's look for that reticular and let's invest in that kind of shape, which is a shape that can grow much more and much further than a circle that becomes a congestion. So that is the basic approach. Let's go beyond the circle, or let's go beyond the archipelago, which is a fashionable approach now. No, bits of islands scattered around. In this case, bits of cities scattered around. Let's make a structure that will be efficient and that will allow flexibility for the economy and the location, accessibility for the lower social incomes, and let's build in a rational base, just that in an empirical accumulation, disjointed incrementalism base.
Thank you very much. Now, in your long experience, what have you seen so far as some positive indicators of good planning? And for example, in Madrid, where it all started with implementing your Metrometrics method, what have you accomplished there?
Well, Madrid was in a very institutional strong change in 1978. We came out of a dictatorship and we came into a democracy, so we had to write the constitution and the new system of the administrations. And those laws addressed the issues that were important at that time. So we made a system of laws that allowed us to work with the metropolis of Madrid. And then by doing the regional plan, the metropolitan plan of Madrid that you can find in my website, then we were able to address these issues. That doesn't happen often, no? Because administrations have a long run. They do not have to reshape or rewrite the constitution so often. And there are generally many administrations dealing, as we said, with metropolitan issues. Not only administrations in tiers, but as well agencies, water, roads, rails, and so on and so on. And the best metropolis are those who talk together, who talk to each other, who are able to discuss. It's very important, the responsibility of the electorate, because at the end, in a democracy, is the voter that punishes or not a politician or an administration if it's unable to really think about the future and to dialogue with the other administrations. So the maturity of the voter is very important to require from the politicians and the administrations and agency a responsible attitude to dialogue instead of confrontation and just political dealings. No? Those metropolis that work the best are those who have that kind of social asset of a dialogue and discussion. If on top of that dialogue produces a strategic plan for 20 years, 30 years time, then the whole set is a success. No? So I will suggest whenever I meet a Lord Mayor, a mayor, the first question I ask him is, what do you want to be when you will grow up? No? When you will be a grown-up, what do you want to be? Look ahead 20 years, 30 years, see what is your role in complementing other cities, what is your role in a global structure, and then go for it, because that's the best way to make it best for you and your citizens.
Mr. Ortiz, what is your opinion on future development of Southeast European cities? And can you give some advice to professionals and government representatives that are listening to you right now?
Well, I think Southeast Europe has a very difficult topography. is not an easy one. Cities are very determined by the location in a very strong topography. As a region, you have always to think on globalization. What is the role of Southeast Europe in the world? What can Southeast Europe offer the world, and then develop upon that? No? I think the location of Southeast Europe between the Central Europe markets and production, which is one of the main poles around the world, and the Middle East, the land link with Turkey, and Turkey playing a role of equilibrium between the Arab countries and Europe, no? Southeast Europe has a role to play there. The land link, obviously, of the sea one or the air one, but the land link, which requires a lot of transport, road and rail transport, there is a role to play into that transformation of goods that go through added value, many elements. No, so I think Southeast Europe should understand the role it has to play, and then the cities have to prepare to play that role. No? The structure of urban settlements in Southeast Europe is not a structure of huge metropolis. No? You have middle-sized towns, very easy to manage. They are really not the huge metropolis which are growing like mad. But you have a future of urban development, of wealth, of economic development, maybe not a population explosion, but even without population explosion, cities grow. Madrid, when I was in charge, did not grow in population. It was 6 million, and we were stopped at 6 million, but it was growing in wealth. It was growing on wealth, and immediately wealth means the adaptation and transformation of families. Madrid had gone from families of 5 to families of 2.5. No? So if you have the same population, but with a different family structure, more money, and you move from 5 members per family to 2.5, automatically you have to build a new house, because those 2 families will live in 2 houses instead of 1. So Madrid was growing and developing. You have to double the size of the city, because you have to build a house, another house where there was 1. And that is going to happen to Southeast Europe. Growth of dwellings, of housing, of buildings, going with wealth, economic development, and you have to look for that and to look ahead 20, 30 years to see what is your role in the globe, the role in between continents, and then how that will create a growth in Southeast Europe, and to locate the needs for that growth. Not only productive systems, where to do things, the transports, the housing, social facilities, the environment, the protection of the environment. You have then to see your role and to project 30 years ahead, not 10 years, 30 years ahead, to see what you will need and to allocate that in the right position. And sooner or later, that growth will come, and the money to produce and to provide for the infrastructure and the facilities will come. So the problem is not the money. The problem is the intelligence to do things right from the beginning.
Thanks. And in the end, let me ask you about the main idea behind your latest book published by McGraw-Hill, The Art of Shaping the Metropolis, and who is it actually meant for?
Well, this book is meant for the 600 metropolis around the world, which are larger than 2 million inhabitants. There is 600, and they are growing like mad, no? And the professionals and the politicians in charge of that management do not have tools, do not know how to deal with that kind of growth. So generally they deny it, they don't want to look at it. Or if the growth is going to take beyond the horizon of their political responsibility, that's a problem for the next one, not for me. No, that's a very typical political approach. No, so this book is meant mainly for those metropolis, the managers, the politicians, the university, the scholars, academics, university, the students, professionals, which are going to be dealing with those large sizes, huge developments. Obviously, those professionals in Southeast Europe, as many in Spain that ask me constantly, that want to work beyond your borders, that you want to work in Sub-Saharan Africa, the Middle East, and play an international role, that book is very useful for them as well, because it gives them the tools on how to deal with that. Generally, books about Metropolis are written analyzing, describing the problems, but not providing solutions. As I was in office, I was forced to provide solutions, because every day in my office 100 problems came in and I could not just look at them. I had to provide solutions. We created in Madrid a system that was able to cope with the huge growth of Madrid at that time. And that system is the one that we are applying in 30 metropolis around the world with the World Bank. And the book is a resume of that, so people will be able to work in the rest of the 600 metropolis.
Well, I personally find your book very interesting and I will certainly have it in my library. Thank you very much for your time and wish you a good day.
Thank you very much, and I hope the conference will be a full success. Thank you.